What if I told you that the person who broke your heart, who shattered your trust and walked away without looking back, remembers every single detail of what they did to you? The words, the silence, the moment they saw your world fall apart and chose to keep walking. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." But what if I told you that quote only scratches the surface? Because behind that irritation, behind that betrayal, lies a darker truth Jung hinted at, but never fully explained. In this video, we're going beyond the textbook. We're diving into the part no one talks about, the shadow truth about why they seem to forget. While you stay up at night, replaying every look, every lie, every wound. By the end of this, you won't just understand them. You'll finally understand why you felt crazy and why you're not. Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal might just shatter everything you thought you knew about human nature. Let's start with something that might make your stomach drop. The person who hurt you, who betrayed your trust, shattered your heart, and then acted like it never happened, and they didn't forget. They remember everything, every word they said, every promise they broke, every tear you tried to hide. You might be lying awake at night, replaying the pain like a movie stuck on loop, wondering if it was all in your head. But here's the truth, they were watching too. They saw your reaction. They saw your confusion. They saw your world break, and they made a choice to keep going. Carl Jung, one of the most influential minds in psychology, had a name for this deeper layer of behavior. He called it the shadow self, the dark unconscious parts of us we deny or repress. And here's the paradox. The more someone refuses to face their own darkness, the more that darkness controls them. So when someone causes harm and pretends it never happened, they're not operating from amnesia. They're operating from avoidance, a calculated silence, a willful forgetting. You see, the shadow doesn't just vanish when ignored. It grows in power. And sometimes that power shows up as cruelty, as coldness, as the ability to walk away from destruction with a clean conscience. But what if I told you that their silence isn't empty, it's strategic? What if their denial is not confusion, but control? Let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered how someone could hurt you so deeply and still sleep soundly at night? It's not because they're emotionally numb. It's because their ego, what Jung called the persona, or false self, has learned how to protect itself at all costs, even if that cost is your peace. And here's the twist. Your pain isn't just a memory to them. It's a mirror, a reflection of a part of themselves they refuse to acknowledge. So instead of owning it, they bury it, and they bury you with it. But don't let that silence fool you. They remember. They always remember. And the moment you start to see that is the moment you start to take your power back. Here's something that might hit a little too close to home. The people who hurt you the most aren't suffering from memory loss. They're suffering from denial, a very specific, very dangerous kind of denial that Carl Jung called shadow projection. Let me explain. We all have a shadow, the parts of ourselves we'd rather not admit. The envy, the rage, the selfishness, the guilt. And according to Jung, the more we suppress these uncomfortable truths, the more they unconsciously control us. But some people don't just hide their shadows. They project them onto others. Instead of owning their flaws, they assign them to you. Instead of feeling guilt, they make you feel crazy. And instead of looking in the mirror, they hold it up to your face and tell you the reflection is the problem. Have you ever heard someone say, "You're too sensitive," right after they crossed a boundary? Or, You're overreacting when you're just expressing real pain. That's not clarity. That's not empathy. That's shadow projection in action. You become the villain in the story they created to avoid confronting their own darkness. And here's the twisted part. When you try to hold them accountable, they don't feel remorse. They feel attacked. Because taking responsibility would mean peeling back their carefully constructed mask. And that mask, the one Jung called the persona, is designed to protect their ego, not your well-being. So they rewrite the narrative. Suddenly, you were the one who misunderstood. You were too needy. You were the cause of all the chaos. It's not because they don't remember what happened. It's because remembering would force them to face their own capacity for harm. And that's a level of self-awareness many people are simply not ready for. Think about this. How many times have you apologized just to keep the peace? While they never once said, "I was wrong." That's the cost of carrying someone else's shadow. But here's the truth they don't want you to realize. Just because someone refuses to take responsibility doesn't mean the responsibility is yours. Their projection isn't proof of your guilt. It's a symptom of their refusal to heal. And once you see that clearly, you begin to reclaim the space they tried to occupy in your mind. You begin to separate their shadow from your light. Let's talk about silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that leaves you spinning. You know that moment after the argument? When they suddenly go quiet, no apology, no explanation, no acknowledgement, just nothing. That silence isn't random. It's not a misunderstanding. It's a strategy. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart." Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. But here's the problem. When someone uses silence as a weapon, they distort your inner vision. They make you look outside of yourself for answers that only confuse you more. You start second-guessing. Did I overreact? Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe it wasn't that bad. This isn't just emotional avoidance. It's psychological manipulation. The silence they deploy isn't passive. It's designed to shift the burden of confusion onto you. While they stay comfortable in their refusal to engage, you're the one left obsessing over analyzing, spiraling. You replay every word. You rewrite the conversation in your head 100 times, hoping for a response that never comes. You start to crave even the smallest sign of acknowledgement, a text, a glance, anything, just to feel like your pain mattered. But here's the twist, that craving it keeps you stuck. It keeps them in control. Because when someone refuses to speak, they force you to do all the emotional labor. They stay silent, and you start explaining yourself to the void. They disappear, and you start chasing closure that was never meant to arrive. This is what Carl Jung recognized in his studies of power dynamics. He understood that silence can destabilize, not heal, especially when it follows betrayal. And here's what I've learned personally. The people who choose silence when they know you're in pain aren't protecting peace. They're protecting power. It's easier for them to ignore your truth than confront their own. So if you've ever been stuck in that loop, waiting for a response that never comes, know this. It's not about your worth. It's about their inability to meet you, where healing begins with honest connection. You don't need to fill the silence they created. You need to stop interpreting it as your fault. The truth is, their silence speaks volumes. And it says more about them than it ever did about you. Let's talk about the mask. Not the one people wear at parties, but the one they wear every single day. Carl Jung called it the persona. The version of ourselves we present to the world to survive, to fit in, to avoid the deeper truths that scare us. And for some people, that mask becomes their whole identity. You've probably met someone like this. They always seem composed. They say the right things. They perform the role perfectly. But there's something missing: authenticity, vulnerability, depth. Because behind that polished exterior is a soul too afraid to look inward. Jung described this existence as a provisional life, a life lived not in truth, but in postponement. Postponing growth, postponing self-confrontation, postponing the moment where they'd finally ask, "Who am I really?" And here's the painful truth: some people never take that mask off. Why? Because the persona protects them from shame, from judgment, from feeling unworthy. But in doing so, it also traps them in a loop where they never truly live, they just perform. This is why you may feel so disconnected around certain people. It's not you. It's the fact that their entire existence is built on a version of themselves they created to survive, not to be known. And when you're someone who's doing the inner work, when you're healing, growing, seeking authenticity, that energy clashes. Because your soul is craving real, and they're still clinging to a script. But here's something powerful to remember. The persona is not evil. It's just outdated. It served a purpose once, to keep someone safe. But as Jung taught us, the danger is in never evolving beyond it. If you're watching this and realizing you've worn a mask for too long, you're not alone. We all do it at some point. The turning point comes when we have the courage to take it off, not all at once, but piece by piece, until what's left is real. Because life wasn't meant to be performed. It was meant to be felt. Have you ever waited for an apology that never came? Not because the person didn't know they hurt you, but because they couldn't afford to admit it. Let's go deeper. Carl Jung had a name for this psychological inflation. It's what happens when someone becomes so identified with their ego, so over-attached to the image they've constructed, that admitting they were wrong would feel like death to that identity. For people like this, saying "I'm sorry" isn't just uncomfortable, it's unbearable. Because an apology means more than just acknowledging harm. It means cracking the foundation of who they believe they are. It means admitting, "I'm not perfect. I don't always know best. I caused pain." And if their entire sense of self is built on being right, that kind of vulnerability feels impossible. So instead, they deflect, they minimize, they turn it back on you. "Why are you so sensitive? You misunderstood me. I didn't mean it like that." Sound familiar? This isn't about logic, it's about identity preservation. Their ego is like a fragile glass tower. One crack, and the whole thing might collapse. But here's the paradox. The strongest people you'll ever meet are the ones who can say, "I was wrong. I hurt you. I take responsibility." Because that requires more strength than pretending perfection. And if you've been on the receiving end of silence, gaslighting, or avoidance, you need to hear this. Their refusal to apologize doesn't make your pain less real. It just reveals the limits of their emotional maturity. Jung believed that true growth begins when we stop protecting our ego and start integrating the parts of ourselves we're afraid to face. So the next time you wonder why someone couldn't say sorry, remember, it's not about your worth. It's about their walls. And healing. It begins the moment you stop waiting for permission to feel whole. Let me ask you something that might change the way you heal. What if the closure you're waiting for is never coming? We often believe healing requires something from the person who hurt us. An apology, an explanation. some sign that they finally get it. But what if they never will? The hard truth is not everyone is capable of emotional growth. Not because they're evil, but because emotional maturity requires self-awareness. And self-awareness demands that you sit with discomfort, own your wounds, and take responsibility. Some people just aren't willing to go there. As one therapist put it, trying to extract accountability from someone emotionally unavailable is like trying to draw water from an empty well. You keep lowering the bucket. You hope this time it'll come back full. But it never does. Not because you're not worthy, but because they have nothing to give. And here's the shift. Your healing doesn't require their awakening. That moment of freedom comes when you stop needing them to be different in order for you to be whole. You don't need them to say sorry to validate what you felt. You don't need them to see the pain to prove that it was real. Because you saw it, you lived it, and you survived it. Carl Jung believed that transformation begins not when others change, but when we reclaim the parts of ourselves we gave away hoping someone else would protect them. So if you're still waiting for them to change, to understand, to heal first, ask yourself, what would happen if I stopped waiting? That question, uncomfortable as it is, might be the very beginning of your freedom. There's a powerful quote from Carl Jung that I want to leave you with. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And maybe, just maybe, that's what this entire journey was about all along. You see, while some people stay trapped in illusions wearing masks, they don't even realize they've glued to their own skin. You've chosen something far more difficult. You chose truth. You chose to wake up. And waking up isn't glamorous. It's not a smooth path paved with clarity and light. It's messy. It's raw. It's the shattering of beliefs that once kept you safe, but now only keep you small. And here's what's even harder. As you awaken, you might look around and realize the people who hurt you, they're still asleep, still stuck in the dream that their denial protects them, still afraid of their own reflection, still building a life around avoiding themselves. And maybe that's the hardest part. To know that while you're doing the soul work, the deep, uncomfortable, liberating inner transformation, and they're not even willing to take the first step. So what do you do with that? You stop trying to wake them. Because the truth is, you were never meant to carry the weight of someone else's awakening. You were meant to carry your own, instead of forcing understanding from someone who's not ready. Start investing that energy into the parts of you that are finally coming alive. Pour your love into the relationships that nourish you. Feed your time into the spaces that expand you. And protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. There's a quiet, powerful freedom that comes when you no longer need others to validate your growth. When you stop chasing closure from people who can't even be honest with themselves. That freedom is called self-possession. And it's not loud. It's not aggressive. It's a calm knowing I am becoming who I truly am. And nothing can take that from me. So if this message resonated with you, if you felt something stir inside you while watching this, it's because part of you already knows you're on the path back to yourself. And that's worth everything. Call to action. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with someone who needs it. You never know whose life you might shift with a single message of truth. This isn't just a video. It's a conversation between awakening souls, and I'm grateful you're here for it.